Hi, and welcome to Cockatoos with Attitude, episode 95, My Philosophy of Parrot Care. And my philosophy in general. Get out of there, Lorelei! No! Get off there! Go on, get off! That's a good girl. Don't climb on the file cabinet. Lorelei's. Thank you. Little pest. She's so cute, but such a pest. Well, I wanted everybody to have an idea of my philosophy because I've had a lot of people ask questions about this and that. So I wanted to discuss my philosophy of parrot care.
Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
The Chloe Sanctuary hopes to give you insight into the health and happiness of your companion parrots. We hope to help you build happy homes using reliable and proven tools. The best homes are built on a rock-solid foundation. And the best foundation for a happy home is the bedrock of science. When we stand on the shoulders of giants, the scientists who have worked long and diligently to understand our companions, we can reach new heights of understanding. And understanding is the key to success.
I think treated, most of these birds have a good prognosis, and I would say in...
What does avian veterinary medicine have to tell us about our feathered friends? How can the tools of behavior shaping make our homes happier for us and our companions?
Shake.
How can we deal with biting, screaming, or other misbehavior? What is it like to live among parrots? Let them roam around about you and share a life with them. How much freedom do you give them? What happens if you form a bond of trust with them? Watch and see what understanding their true nature can do for you. Come with us on a journey as we do more than examine a parrot's world. We live in it. Make some popcorn and bring in a few wood blocks. Let everyone have something to chew and a comfortable place to perch. Cockatoo is a presentation of the Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, a nonprofit charity dedicated to the empowerment of captive parrots and public awareness.
And while I may come off as kind of a know-it-all to some people, please recognize that I defer to scientific professionals in nearly every case. So if you have a differing opinion from mine, be sure to come packing some scientific evidence. Be able to show me abstracts, be able to show me where there's a consensus about this particular issue, and I don't mean a consensus of people on the internet, okay? I'm talking about a consensus of trained professionals, people who have studied these things. And again, I defer to them in almost every case, and I'll say almost every case because there are some situations I will mention where I've had to expand my view a little bit because there wasn't enough knowledge known about something. It wasn't that science didn't know something, but it was slightly outside of what had been studied, okay? Now, one of the opinions I had to change just for this episode is I've always said I'm not an expert, okay? I'm just an amateur. But, so today I looked up in the Apple Dictionary, I looked up how pigeons can sing. Oh, no, I didn't do that. We know that pigeons can sing. It's beautiful. Do you have another verse? Do you have another verse? Oh, that's a beautiful verse. That's a beautiful verse, Peaches.
Come on, Peach.
I forgot to time this, otherwise I'll run on forever. Okay. So I looked up expert. Now this is what it says. I'm reading this, okay? A person who has a comprehensive and authoritative knowledge of or skill in a particular area, okay? Like a financial expert, an expert in childcare, that kind of thing. So technically, I do fall in the category of expert, but I think that's more because I defer to the professionals and I always go to look there when I have any questions. I either speak to an avian vet, I look something up in the sources that I have, the books I have here. You're going to hear Bob screaming because I don't want any problem. I have to make a choice, Pippa or Bob, okay? So I chose Pippa. Because I think Steve Jobs would be unhappy if I didn't, okay? So, nobody knows everything, but the experts, they have spent the time to study the issues, and they've done so in a scientific community. They've had someone check their work, in other words. So where I've always said I'm not an expert, I now stand corrected according to the dictionary. See, I can change my opinion. I see this because I refer and defer to the professional behaviorists, veterinary sources, biologists, and I've deferred to them and studied them for over a decade, okay? Why do I defer to them? Peaches, do you know the answer? Because of the way that they use the scientific method to come to solutions, okay? I wanted to read you something from the book, The Parrots of Lochio, but it's vanished. I have no idea where it is. I had to buy another copy because I can't be without it. It's actually out of print, so getting a copy isn't always that easy. But Amazon had a new one. That's a rarity. And they actually had a copy that was brand new, still in the wrapper, per se. But it shows incredible attention to detail that these scientists use in order to study something and how they check each other. And then how outside groups also check their information. So, well, hi, Chloe. How you doing? How's my Clo-Clo? So no matter what I think, okay, I'm going to defer to them unless I can absolutely prove I have found something that works. It still can be proven, okay? Now, I don't believe in bird stores. I'm going to get some things out of the way. I don't believe in bird stores. I consider them as advocating slavery. These guys are about as intelligent as a monkey. I don't think monkeys should be in people's homes. I don't think these guys should be in people's homes. That said, and I don't believe they belong in captivity, but that said, they're here already. They can't be put back in the wild. And there's going to be plenty of these birds around for the next 60 years, longer, without having to breed more, okay? So I don't believe in breeders. I don't believe in maintaining these guys as pets. They're just too intelligent and too far off the beaten path. They're too different. They're not like mammals. They don't even breathe like a mammal. We have muscles to inhale. They have muscles to exhale. They don't have any protection when they breathe from the poisons in the air. They're missing the alveoli, okay? But there's so much more that people would need to know about these to have them in their homes. I also think that we should get together and make laws to protect them. That can be done. If you check on our website under resources, you'll see, that's www.chloesanctuary.org. You'll see the Norwegian guidelines under resources. We need something like that to protect these guys, because as it stands right now, they're not protected. The animal control comes out, they don't even know what to do with them. They don't even know when they're being mistreated. So, now on a personal note, I just found out, because they've never even defined this disorder before, I have a thing called SDAM, Severely Deficient Autobiographical Memory. And basically what that means I have an inability to be able to re-experience the past events of my life. Okay, I don't do it, and if I do think I'm And if I try to look back in my past and I see anything, I see it from the third person, as if I was looking down on myself or at myself from an angle. Most of these people are high functioning, but for example, I can't remember. If I met you, I would never be able to remember your face. I'll recognize you when I see you. I'll recognize your voice, but I won't remember what you look like. I couldn't tell a cop what you look like, okay? This is typical of it. In fact, one lady I heard on a BBC podcast, they asked her if she knew what her brother was wearing for his wedding, and she said yes, but only because she'd seen a picture of it. We seem to be able to remember two-dimensional things. Most of us also have an extremely good memory for technical details. It helps a lot with these guys. But, for example, I had no idea. It took 2.5 years to figure out Sugar's problem. Because I felt there was a line that I shouldn't cross in giving her medicine, because that's the line that had been drawn by the scientists who've been working on it. She's just outside the norm. And that, again, is one where I had to say, okay, this is true, that they're saying this is the maximum, but in her case, it's not true. Okay? And I can prove it out because her behavior is normal and she doesn't pick. All right? Most people with SDAM are living healthy lives, and most of them are happy. It's just that we don't remember what happened yesterday. Okay, and we can't vividly relive anything that we have ever done in the past. So it's almost like we're carrying around a journal that has little notes about what the past was. We don't really see it. So I think it helps with the birds, honestly. But I'm not sure how, but I think it does. I will put a link up there so you can check this out if you want to see what SDAM is, just in case you happen to be interested. But I'm pointing it out. This is something that affects me every day. And one of the things it does for me is it makes it so that each day is like a brand new day. So I don't get frustrated if it takes me the 2.5 years to get Sugar finally healed. And I don't see that time frame either. I had to look back through my Apple photos, find pictures of her from that when I first brought her in, and then look at the date on them to know how long it took. I couldn't figure it out on my own, and that's just typical of this particular problem. I live by the behavioral principle, every bird is a study of one, and this also applies to their biology. I don't take this to mean that they don't have common innate behaviors and common biology. Of course they do. But just like one person can take a medicine and they're fine, and another person will react to it and have to go to the hospital with anaphylactic shock, there are differences. Peaches doesn't act like Sugar, who doesn't act like Chloe. They all have different behavioral norms, okay? So it's important to understand the basic behavior of each species, but also realize that there will be variations within that basic. Okay, that's one of my key principles. I try to only pay attention to behavior and not to develop preconceived notions about their identities. Like when Coco came in, she was shy and retiring. I would not say she is shy and retiring now. No one will mess with Coco. Will they, Coco? I'm surprised she's letting me keep my feet up there. That's not normally what she'll do. She won't bite me hard, but she'll let me know she doesn't want my feet there. I don't blame her. They probably stink. Not that they have a highly developed olfactory. They don't. Hello, Peach. You gonna say hello to the people? Say hello. 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 See? Very good. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, my mentor in college, my mentor at university, taught me to use whatever I learned in everyday life. Right? And the way he taught me that was, I asked him if he could show me Old German script. It kind of looks like stick writing. We actually use that in English as well at one point. But it looks like stick writing. So he showed me, he wrote out the alphabet, showed me how to write it. And then we had a test coming up. I did the test, and he handed it to me. I got an A, but there was a note on it. It said, "See me." So I went to him, and what he told me was that I know how to write in Fraktur. So I know how to write it. And that if I do another test without writing it in Fraktur, I will get an F on it. He said, because when you learn something, you should use it. So this is the first principle. I use applied behavior analysis every day, all the time. Why? Because it's a tool I learned to use, okay? And I'm going to use that tool. It works, I'm going to use it. Another first principle I have is that just because I've lived with the birds for many, many years doesn't mean I know anything. If you haven't studied and applied that knowledge with birds, I don't care how long you lived with them. And that's like saying in the old days, let's go back to the Middle Ages. Someone would say, well, of course the sun moves across the sky, and the earth sits still and the sun moves across the sky. It's so obvious. And that's exactly what will happen if you take the opinion that just being around them teaches you everything you know. I can remember back when we used to do rescue and rehoming, a woman had said that she and her African gray had lived together for 8 years. Therefore, she knew everything she needed to know about birds. So she could get a cockatoo or a macaw, and she knew everything she needed to know. So what did we do? We denied her access. We were not. There was no way we were going to let her have a bird, because once you say I know everything, but you haven't even studied the subject, well, then you shouldn't have one. They're just too complicated. One of the things we do one of the things I have to do is to struggle against the natural human tendency for cognitive bias. Now, what's cognitive bias? Well, I can remember my dad. We're driving along on the freeway, and some guy would cut him off, and he wouldn't say anything. And then some woman would do it, and he'd go, "That woman driver." And, he only kept track of the women that did that to him. He never kept track of the men. That's cognitive bias. We do it all the time. Now, you may not think you do. And so I urge you to watch the video that I've been touting for years. It's in our show notes, but I'm going to put it up on the screen here too. You're going to test your awareness, okay? And what it's called is Test Your Awareness Whodunit. If you can watch this video and you still believe that you see the world as it is, okay, you actually believe that you're looking at things just the way they are, I suggest you get a psychiatrist. It's only 1 minute and 58 seconds long, but it can change your life just to watch this one little video. Because you think you're seeing everything and you're missing almost everything that's going on. Plus, our senses aren't the same as theirs. They see into the ultraviolet, they see into the fluorescent. We don't. They've got huge eyeballs. What you see on the surface there is, there's a huge eyeball behind there. And they see so much better than we do. But still, we have all these things that we do as humans that helped us when we were surviving in the as cave people. But they don't really help us now. And they make us make mistakes. Okay? Oh, did we poop up there? Oh, good grief. Hold on. See if I can get that massive poop off here. Yeah, that worked. Okay. So, because we have this problem with seeing the world as it is, I maintain my continuing education with books and scientific abstracts and connections with professional sources, and talking to my mentors, discussing with people, discussing things with professionals. And do I ever make my own decisions? Yeah, sure, but mostly based on what I've learned from the scientific community. I do a lot of research before I start making grand pronouncements about what to do with a bird. And sometimes I'll get advice. I had one vet, not a regular vet, advised that because of the way she was destroying her feathers, that we should cut off part of her wing. And I didn't see that. I did research and saw no reason to do that. I believe that most of what you hear on social media, on Facebook or Twitter, is wrong about birds. Okay, it can be harmful or fatal. I have no faith in and see as totally false and bogus all alternative medicine. Okay. I think if you don't confirm whether something is going to work, friendly tips from people, you're playing Russian roulette with your bird, and I won't play Russian roulette with them. Okay. There are some things, like when someone gets injured, I might not run right off to the vet because I know exactly what to do, and I don't need to have any tests done. I'm not going to go. But that's not because we have the funding for it. It's just that you can't run there for every little thing. But if you don't know and you haven't spent time studying both the biology and behavior of these guys, then you need to run whenever you're not sure. And I go every time I'm not sure. If I don't absolutely know that the situation doesn't need a vet, I go. Period. That's it. Most people remain blind to the fact that they don't see the world as it actually is. I know that I don't see it. Okay? I still catch myself making pronouncements. Oh, this is this, or this is this, or, Coco's she's just upset. That's why she isn't eating. That doesn't mean it's true. What does her poop look like? Did I check her poop to make sure her poop was okay? Did I look at all of her vital signs? How's her weight doing? See, these are all things. If her weight's dropping and she's not eating, there could be a problem. If her poop looks funny, that's 3 things, okay? So, instead of going, oh, she's just being finicky, I look. Okay? And you need to do that, I think. Now, do I blame those of you who fly by the seat of your pants? No, I don't. That's because I'm a determinist. And if you haven't taken philosophy, you probably don't know what that is. But that's somebody who doesn't believe in free will. Okay? And I'll put it simply. I could give you a whole bunch of philosophical claptrap and you could try to figure it out. You really want to hear a good argument for it. And of course, I became a determinist long before I heard this, but look up Sam Harris. You can get the Audible book, or you can buy the book, Free Will. That'll give you my argument, because he's essentially making the same argument I do. But just imagine this. Have you ever seen anything in this world out here that just magically appeared out of nothing? No. Everything had causes leading up to what it is. That perch over there had causes. Somebody had to mine the ore to make the steel. Somebody had to blend the steel. Somebody had to, extrude the rod. Then somebody made the plastic parts. All these different things came to make it what it is. All right? It wouldn't be what it was without all those changes. That's why I don't believe in free will. Does that mean that people shouldn't be punished? Yeah, it means that. No one should be punished for what they do. Now, if you've got somebody who's a killer, you need to put them away or cure their problem. Okay? But you don't have to call them guilty. Okay? So you won't see me in any judge's robes. I'm not going to sit there and pronounce judgment that you're a bad person because you don't do this or you don't do that. I'm not that kind of person, okay? So, it doesn't mean I don't fight for what's right. It just means I can't help but do that. I couldn't do anything less, all right? So not believing in free will is not a reason to say that nothing matters. Well, that's enough philosophy. Okay. I live by the baloney detection kit from Carl Sagan and the rules of symbolic logic. Okay? I don't have enough time to enumerate that here. I'll do that in the patrons video, on our supporters video. Get out of there, Lorelei. Come on, Lorelei, stop doing this. Stop trying to get into everything and cause trouble. Silly girl. So basically these are points that you need to look at every time when you hear something to prove it out to be true. It's a way to look in and determine truth, and something that was Carl Sagan came up with. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and I will discuss that also in our supporters video. I never do anything outside of my skill set unless a life is immediately in danger and there's no other option. So if I have somebody who's bleeding profusely, I don't have a second person here, so I'm not going to be hitting the road with a bleeding bird. I'm going to be solving the problem here. And that comes down to, even if I had to do sutures, I would do that. Okay? But then I would get to the vet immediately. You know, as soon as I could get into a vet, I would. Now, on weekends and holidays, that's harder to do. I'm always trying to improve my skill set, too. And doubt is the seed of knowledge. You know, when someone says, oh, well, he's just sleepy over there. You know, he's been sleepy all day. Well, doubt would be, well, maybe there's something else wrong. That doubt can help you. It helps me. Learning to doubt yourself. I use applied behavior analysis, ABA. The reason I do that is because it gives them the power to make choices. Okay? It's not just me telling them what to do, but it gives them power to make their own choices. I use it not just because it works, because it gives them power over their lives. On a personal note, people will say, which bird do you love more? I don't believe in love. I think the word is so misused and has so many meanings. I love chocolate. That's interesting. Well, I used to love him, but now I hate him. So I actually use a principle that comes from Buddhism. They don't use the word love. I'm sorry, but I got to reset this. Peaches, you need to get on my lap. Thank you, baby. Good girl. I know. It's a pain. You want to sit on my hand? You can. Okay. Instead of loving them, I believe in loving kindness or loving friendliness. So I treat them with loving kindness no matter how I feel. And the nice thing about that is when you treat things with loving kindness, after a while, that just becomes a way of living. And I think I learned a lot of that from them. I learned it from my insight meditation, but I also learned it from them, because that's kind of how they work. They get into little fights and things, but that's because they don't have the space they need to survive. They should be living in like a 40 mile by 40 mile range, not in little tiny spaces. They normally will fly away from a confrontation. So as the Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. You want to go somewhere. You're not going to go sit over next to Chloe. You can sit down here if you want, but you're not going to sit next to Chloe. And you're not going over there because I know what you're going to do. No. Cause move. No. Over there. Those two will fight with each other. Many people have remarked about my patience. I don't think my ex-wives would agree. What patience I've learned from the flock. Haven't I? I think my meditation has also helped. I noticed that, anger used to be my way when I was younger, but it's like here and gone a lot faster. So, a few final thoughts. Doing what's best for the bird, or a human, for that matter, doesn't mean giving in. Okay? A bird may want to eat a whole bunch of junk food, like eat nothing but millet. You don't give in to that. Okay? It may be tough to train them to eat other food, but you need to do that. So, doing what's best isn't giving in. Now, there's times when you can. They want an extra sunflower seed or something like that. That's okay. But you don't want to make a habit of letting them have everything they want. You want to help them make better choices. That took a long time with sugar. I'll talk about that in the patron and supporter segment. But The last thing I'd like to say is I sincerely hope that you will learn to be happy and have a better life with your feathered friends. Okay? And if there's any way, by hook or by crook, that I can help, I will. Won't I, Peach? Won't I? Yeah. You want to say goodbye to the people, Peaches? Say goodbye to the people? She goes, what people? I don't see them. Well, they're in the camera. Say goodbye to the people? Before we jump to conclusions, let's look. The beak opens, the eye seems to be staring at one direction. Now it's slightly shifted. The crown comes up, so there's their crest up. The eye staring in one direction. The eye slightly shifts. The beak opens again. This would probably be interpreted as interest and mild excitement. One way to make working with your feathered companions better is to start thinking of yourself as a social worker. A social worker, yes, a social worker for aliens. In order to work with an alien life form, you would need to learn everything you could about them. Finding out what their needs and wants are would be critical to giving them care and advising them about how to live in our world. Why a social worker? Social workers give understanding, therapy, and provide services to help others in need. They help to relieve suffering, help others to meet challenges in their lives, help others deal with crisis and emergency, and work to make things better for their clients. In order to provide this kind of care, we need to put the other person, bird in this case, in touch with the resources around them. We give them gentle assistance in making their own best choices, see that they get the best physical and mental care, as needed, and proper rest and relaxation to recuperate from difficulties. If you think of yourself as a social worker specializing in the care of aliens, one who helps them to achieve their goals in a way that promotes the happiness of all, you will be well on your way as a trainer and as a mentor to your feathered ones. Hi, patrons. Yeah, I think I'll start off by talking about sugar. Sugarberry? I love you too. The book says the maximum amount of Haldol for a bird is around 0.15. of the 2 milligram per milliliter solution, which is the concentrate, right? And I don't know why that stuck in my head, but I tried to keep her under that level. There's no way. And I put collars on her neck, and 2.5 years she just suffered. She hated those collars. She'd get on the floor, push her face along the floor, because you face the collars down instead of up on a bird when they're feather pickers. And that was pretty bad. It was actually awful. And then one day, after all that time, and I didn't know how long it was because of my SDAM, but SDA, I said, this is ridiculous. She's suffering. I'm just going to give her 0.25, and then wait till it takes its effect, about an hour, and take the collar off and see what happens. She almost bled to death. She almost bled to death like 3 times before this. So I took the collar off. I gave her the medicine, took the collar off, and she started going right to her feathers. Yeah, just kind of cleaning up. She wasn't pulling feathers. She was just preening things, getting rid of little things that were in the way, little feathers that didn't belong there. And she really hasn't picked since. Now I got her down to 0.21, and that's where she sits now. But I tried to take her down lower. Not with sugar. I got her to 0.17, and it was off to see Dr. Young, and we spent an hour pulling feathers out. The ones she'd broken, it was a mess, just a mess. We got rid of all the other little ones too that were impacted. And then after that I went to Dr. Loudis, and he suggested, because her follicles were oval, okay, instead of round, and the feathers were coming in filled with blood all the way down. We're talking about her primaries and her secondaries. So if she broke one, she'd bleed to death. And that would be even if accidental if she wasn't, doing feather destructive behavior. So he suggested putting her on a huge dose of Medicam, meloxicam, for 21 days. And he said there was research that it didn't really cause a problem. I later found that research. I went ahead and did it because she was going to die anyway if she accidentally broke a feather. And after 21 days, her feathers started coming in round. Another vet, I mentioned that to, and I really don't think he believed it. I had to look. He had a look on his face like, yeah, whatever. It's not a miracle drug, but it worked. So, and it was offered by a veterinary professional. I keep that in my toolkit in case I ever get another bird in here who has that problem. Not that we go through a lot of birds because we're a sanctuary, not a rescue, but. Cognitive bias. Now there's funny, confirmation bias is the first thing you do. You look over and you say, well, I've seen this before and I know what it is. Confirmation bias, good examples like Bob. He says good morning. And I used to say that he only says that in the morning. That's not true. Once in a while, rarely, he does say it almost every morning, but once in a while he will say it at night. And I ignore it in more ways than one. I don't register. For a long time I didn't even register it. I would say he never said it at night, but he does. Maybe once a month. He doesn't get a response from it, so he stops. He may say it that one time and not say it again because he'll get a response from something else. So he seems to know that it's, and this is my guess based on what I know of behavior, so my guess is that he is well aware that you say that in the morning, and he knows the difference between morning and evening. I believe he does, and I think all these guys do. I mean, come on, their eating cycle and everything else. But he will still test it to see if he can get something by saying it once in a while at night. So saying good morning in the morning is normally done because that's when it gets a response. He's still testing once in a while, maybe once a month. I haven't recorded it, but I pay attention to it now. But for the longest time, I would say he didn't do it. And that's because of confirmation bias. Like my dad driving down the road going, well, there's another woman driver for you. When actually men and women were doing that at about the same rate, cutting him off. And he wasn't paying attention to it. And there's a lot of cognitive biases, but that's a good example, okay? Human beings tend to see things a certain way, and I really hope you watch that video and tell me what you think. Go and watch that video, the whodunit, and tell me what you think. It's only 1 minute and 58 seconds. And when you get to the end of that, if you really don't think that you have a trouble seeing the world the way it is, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, because I know when I watched it, and I've taken logic and in college and basic biology. I wanted to be a vet at one time, but marriage has kind of got in the way. The story of my life, right? And when you have SDAM, you just end up with another marriage that was like the other marriage that was like the other marriage. And you don't even realize there's a cycle there. I know now, but I didn't then. So I have enough of a background, and then I've done a lot of study on my own. But we just tend to assume. It's like when you're looking forward, okay, and you see something move out of the corner of your eye. You don't look over there and go, I wonder if it's something good for me. You immediately, what is it? And there's a fear response that's built into the human mind, okay? Because we're running from tigers or lions or whatever. So the more you can know about it, if you can take logic, yes, they're not offering it as much in college as they used to, but there are. YouTube has videos on logic. There's podcasts on it as well. If you're interested, I can send you a link to a podcast where they teach it. But here's a good example too. People will say, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. That's not true. That's logically false. And I'll say this in what you learn if you take logic. I will say that you can't affirm the antecedent. All right? Modus tollens. A implies B. Okay? If there's a fire, then there is smoke. All right? The cause, fire. If there's a fire, then there is smoke. Okay? You can say, well, there's no smoke, so there's no fire. That logically works. Okay? But you can't say there is smoke. You can't say there is smoke, therefore there's a fire, because you're affirming the antecedent. I could put smoke in a bowl and leave it there overnight and then open the bowl and there would be smoke, but there's no fire. If this just sounds weird to you, take a logic class, study logic, and it'll make sense. It will make sense to you. It seems a little weird. Now, if you think this is way complicated, the ancient Greeks were doing this 2,500 years ago, okay? It's not like it's anything new. They're the ones that figured it out. So, when you hear words like contrary or contradictory, you'll know what those are if you take logic. The Cape Parrot, also called Le Vaillant's parrot, is named after François Le Vaillant, a noted ornithologist and Renaissance man born in 1753. While he was in Africa, he scrupulously detailed many new species of birds, and several are named after him, including the Cape Parrot. The Le Vaillant's parrot eats nuts and fruit kernels, mostly of the yellowwood tree. They are known for their slow-rowing flight, distinctive silhouettes, and piercing, shrill calls. Unfortunately, their conservation status is dire. They are threatened by psittacine, beak, and feather disease, illegal trapping for trade, and logging in their extremely specific habitat. They range only in the Afro-Montane forest of southern KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape and Limpopo provinces. Nesting hollows are being quickly destroyed, and, like other parrots, they use these hollows exclusively for breeding. Their diet consists of yellowwoods, which are also the subject of illegal trade. The Cape Parrot Working Group at the University of KwaZulu-Natal aims to conserve the Cape Parrot and its habitat in South Africa. They monitor their movements by radio transmitters, study their breeding habits and nesting behavior, establish nest boxes for them, among many of their projects. Only about 400 remain in the wild. The World Parrot Trust is supporting the work of the Cape Parrot Working Group. Donations can be made at the link on your screen and in the show notes. It'll make your life better. And you'll hear politicians in a whole new light. You'll know when they're lying. Which is like, I heard that they did a study on that. And 1 year, the one that they could find that was doing the least lying was telling the truth 50% of the time. But it will help you in a lot of other ways too. Obviously, it would help if you took applied behavior analysis, but you can learn some of that on the web. You can learn some of that from podcasts. If you're interested, just shoot me an email and I'll give you links to some of the podcasts that I listen to about that stuff. Now, I was talking about how going to the avian vet. I'll give you a recent example. When Salamander split his beak. Now, if you look at his upper mandible, and that's like it's facing you, okay? What he did is he cracked it from here to here. And it was about 10 centimeters, a little over 1/4 of an inch long. And it hit an arterial flood. So there was an artery there. Yeah, they do have blood supply all the way to the end of their beak. So, and it was bleeding. It was bleeding terribly. I staunched it by pushing that. You got to imagine this. He's got to be pretty trusting. You have to get them where they'll let you handle them. Or you run into a situation like this, and what are you going to do? Just let them die? So you have to get it where they'll let you handle their beaks and let you handle their feet, and all that has to be done. So, you having fun up there, Pip? Huh? So I got the bleeding stopped, and then I put Super Clot on it. I knew that wasn't going to finish the situation, but if I got it clamped, because where the fracture was, I clamped it this way to hold it together. Then I got the Super Clot on it to stop the bleeding. And once the bleeding had stopped for about a half an hour, then I used veterinary super glue, which is really meant for skin, not so much for beaks, but it works pretty well to hold it together. Then the next day, I go over it with, when I say next day, you never know about me because of my estimate. Next day or the day after. I hit it with, acrylic fingernail glue. Can't be cement. Cement actually works. It breaks down the polymers. Okay, it breaks it down and makes it flow together. Glue actually sticks two things together. It's the difference between adhesion, glue, things stick together, and cohesion, where they bond together and become one. So then I hit it with that, and then about a half hour later I went over it with hard as nails. So it's all sealed off. There won't be any infection getting in there. I already cleaned out any chance of infection. And then sealed it up. Now I kept him out of the general population, running around and using his beak. I took away pine nuts, which apparently are the cause. He was eating a whole bunch of pine nuts. Now the other thing is that his beak, instead of coming to a point, is flat on the end. I've got to fix that, but I can't do it right now. The beak grows, but it doesn't grow that fast. So when his beak has grown that fracture all the way to the end, then I'm going to reshape his beak so it's a nice point. So that if I turn my hind end to him, I'm going to get a surgical implant of a beak, because he likes to bite people in the rear. It's the only way he normally bites you. If you turn, he doesn't like to get the tail end stuck in his face. So, and with Pippa's eye, I did get a comment about that. You know, are you going to take her to the vet? Well, I looked at it closely, you know, with a magnifying glass, and which actually was my phone, because you can set your phone up to magnify. And I looked at it, and there was no damage all around the eye, inside the actual eye itself, just on the eyelid, and it was bruised. It was subcutaneous hematoma, which is just a bruise. So what I did is I already had ophthalmic antibiotics. I put the cream type, more of a gel, on the eyelid itself, and then I put another type of antibiotic on the eye itself, put a drop in the eye. So a gel on the outside and then a drop in the inside. And now the only thing that's left on her eye is a small scab that's coming off. It's driving her crazy. You can tell she doesn't like it. But the scab's going to take a while to peel off. So that's fine. The reason I didn't take her to the vet is it was obvious, and I looked at it closely the same way a vet would to make sure. If there was any question, I would have taken her to the eye care center. We have an eye care center where Dr. Meredith actually is a specialist in avian eyes. So it's not the only thing he does, but he does things like cataracts. And he looked at Peaches and said, because she does have a little cataract for me, he said, I probably won't be alive when that needs to be done, because it's going to be a long time. But I wanted it to get looked at, so it was on record that she has a cataract for me. Don't you, baby? There's a little spot in that eye. Yeah. Hi, Chloe. You guys are so quiet today. I've had a couple of little flare-ups, but you're mostly quiet. The thing about behavior, too, is like with Coco. When she came here, she's so shy and retiring. And, you know, I put her on the medicine, which tends, what the Haldol tends to do, because she was pretty torn up. What it tends to do is to reduce anxiety. Well, when you reduce anxiety, you may get some pretty crazy behavior for a while, because they've been in prison for a while, and if you don't have a probation officer, when you get out of prison, you might kind of go hog wild. So they'll do that. What she did is she got pretty pushy with the other birds. Then she backed down from that, and I can't tell you how long that took. I can look back at the records, but I don't know with my issues. But now she's got a strong will. She knows what she wants. She's real quiet right now, but she knows what she wants. She wants to get up on my chest. She'll push all the other birds out of the way to do it. And then I have to kind of peel beaks away from her, because she's going to do, I'm sorry, sweetheart. She's going to do what she wants to do, so. It's also the human cognitive bias is can cause you some trouble if you look over and say, oh, that bird wants me to pet it. And you're not actually paying close attention to its behavior. So you think a bird wants you to pet it because it's leaning forward, and you're not noticing the feathers on the back of the neck. Okay, if it's just the back of the neck and those feathers are up, where you're dealing with a, let's say a macaw, and the eyes are flashing and the feathers on the neck are on the feathers on the back of the neck are up, you probably don't want to go and pet that bird. You got to watch all the signs. All the signs.
Hello, Peaches.
Yeah. Hello, Peaches. And they don't understand why you can't see it. It's just see these blue light at Kmart to them. I mean, they can see these things a mile away, but we tend to miss it, don't we? Because we tend not to see it. Right, Peach? Right, Peach? Now, Chloe's been through a lot of changes, and I had, you know, if I were to use just my feelings and not my mind to examine things, it would seem that she just doesn't care about me anymore. But you can see she's sitting right over me. Okay? Normally she won't come sit. She'll come sit by me like this. But any other time she kind of ignores me. I go to take her out to the aviary. She tries to fly out of my hands. Like she wants to go live by herself in the wild. She won't talk to me. She doesn't seem to have any interest at all. But as you can see, that's not really true. She's sitting right over here, giving me the old beak clack, which is a combination. It's not just that she's happy to be with me, but she's also, arguing about having this one sitting on me. So she still has a little bit of an attachment to me, even though I don't see it. Logic dictates that she wouldn't be acting the way she is if she didn't have an attachment to me. Ever since she's been with Snowball, that level of attachment dropped. She acts more like a bird in the wild and less like a bird in captivity. Right, Pippa? Yeah. Yeah. Now this one, when she came here, I was introduced to cognitive bias about her. They said, oh, she hates women. Well, I don't believe they hate. Not like we do. I don't believe they have that emotion. She's reacting to women for some reason, but she did. I mean, she would get the feathers on the back of the neck up and lean over and start looking like she was going to bite. That's what she would do. But now, the only time she does that is if she's in her cage, and even there she's pretty quiet about it. She normally won't bite, but I wouldn't put my fingers through her cage if I was a woman. I wouldn't do that. But I can have her out, and she can be in a room with women now. She doesn't go flying trying to eat their faces, which is what I was told she used to do. I believe she did. But I've worked with her on it. I've actually made sure that she's had good experiences with it. So she's overcoming it. But the cognitive bias that was thrown at me was she hates women. That's like Dr. Friedman when she was told, well, don't go into that cage area because all those birds, those are all mean. And these ones over here are friendly. And she was turned around when this was being explained to her, and she went into the wrong cage. And when they came back, there she was with 3 birds on her that were all supposed to be mean. It taught Dr. Friedman something. It helped her to realize just how wrong we can be. And the people who told her that were well-meaning. Again, watch those well-meaning people. They'll give you false information. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And these people are handing out tickets all the time. Okay? Well, I know what that is, and you need to give your bird this. Well, yeah, your bird needs milk thistle because it's got liver problems. Well, first of all, you don't know if there's going to be milk thistle in those pills because they're not regulated. And tests by the New York Attorney General, they went in and tested this stuff, and by golly and by George, there's all kinds of fun stuff. I remember reading that one of the items they found it wasn't listed as rhubarb in one of the pills. Well, try giving rhubarb to one of your birds. Don't. Rhubarb is poison to them. So, what if the milk thistle you're getting has rhubarb in it? Because they can get away with it. The FDA isn't going to throw them in jail for putting it in there. So don't use anything that comes off the shelf. It's homeopathic, or it says it's an alternative thing. It has that little disclaimer that says this has not been tested by the FDA. If it says that, you don't want it. Keep in mind, too, that oils and things you put on your body, shampoos and stuff like that, those don't have the same regulation either. That's why you get people who have like miracle soap and that kind of thing. That's where the soap people can sell you things that don't work and say they do. Don't put anything on these guys on their skin unless it's veterinary approved. It's just like what I put on Sal's beak. I had to be sure that wouldn't be a problem. So always check these things out before you do them. And I don't recommend that you do something like what I did with Sal without consulting with a veterinarian. I've researched how to do this, and I'm good with my hands. It's like when the reason I can shape their beaks and shape their nails and all that with a Dremel is because I used to do jewelry until somebody stole all my jewelry equipment. So I learned how to, cut cabochons and how to shape rock and that kind of thing. And shaping nails is like shaping rock. So, what, Peach? Where you going, Peach? You got a shoe, Peach. You got a shoe. Don't want to shoe? Can I wear the shoe on my finger? Can I wear the shoe on my finger? Let's see. Won't fit your foot though, will it? The shoes are just too small for you. They don't make Zagadactyl shoes. Sugarbird? So I mentioned that I meditate. Well, basically it's kind of funny. People who try to meditate, the first thing they're going to usually say is, well, I tried to meditate and all these thoughts keep coming in and I just can't do it. Well, if you're recognizing that thoughts are in your mind, you're actually meditating. There's a lot of different things that are called that. Insight meditation is trying to learn more about the way your mind works. So you can deal with that fountain of ideas and thoughts that comes flowing through there. Just like in the movie Peaceful Warrior, and I'm trying to quote this from memory, but where Socrates says, you are not your thoughts. And you aren't. You have thoughts coming in and thoughts going out all the time. Thoughts like, oh, Don's so full of it. I'm sure you've had that thought through your mind at least once, but I get that through my own mind. We actually attack ourselves more than we attack others. We expect more from ourselves than we do from others, and then we apply that to people. I know I'm guilty of that. I have to say I'm so thankful to have you guys helping out. It's wonderful to have people who actually care enough to support us, isn't it, Chloe? Isn't it? It is, isn't it? Yeah, you know it is. You're a good girl. Chloe's a good girl. I'm not sure what she's so good for, but she's a good girl. The baloney detection kit. Carl Sagan, okay? I'm going to read these out for you. Wherever possible, there must be independent confirmation of the facts. Encourage substantive debate on the evidence by knowledgeable proponents of all points of view. Arguments from authority carry little weight. Authorities have made mistakes in the past. They will do so again in the future. Perhaps a better way to say it is that in science there are no authorities. At most, there are experts. Spin more than one hypothesis. If there is something to be explained, think of all the different ways in which it could be explained. Then think of tests by which you may systematically disprove each of the alternatives. What survives the hypothesis that resists disproof in this Darwinian selection among multiple working hypotheses has a much better chance of being the right answer than if you had simply run with the first idea that caught your fancy. Try not to get overly attached to a hypothesis just because it's yours. It's the only way station in the pursuit of knowledge. Ask yourself why you like the idea. Compare it fairly with the alternatives. See if you can find reasons for rejecting it. If you don't, others will. Quantify. If whatever it is you're explaining has some measure, some numerical quantity attached to it, you'll be much better able to discriminate against competing hypotheses. What is vague and qualitative is open to many explanations. Of course, there are many truths to be sought in the many qualitative issues we are obliged to confront, but finding them is more challenging. If there's a chain of argument, every link in the chain must work, including the premise. not just most of them. Occam's razor. The convenient rule of thumb urges us, when faced with two hypotheses that explain the data equally well, to choose the simpler. Always ask whether the hypothesis can be, at least in principle, falsified. Propositions that are untestable, unfalsifiable, are not worth much. If you can't prove it wrong, it isn't worth anything, okay? You can't test it. What good is it? Consider the grand idea that our universe and everything in it is just an elementary particle, an electron, say, in a much bigger cosmos. But if we can never acquire information from outside our universe, is not the idea incapable of disproof? You must be able to check assertions out. Inveterate skeptics must be given the chance to follow your reasoning. To duplicate your experiences, yes, Chloe. To duplicate your experiments and see if they get the same result. You should learn logical fallacies. For example, the genetic fallacy. Okay, if you know these fallacies, it makes things a lot better. So, the genetic fallacy. An alcoholic looks at you and goes, "Well, you know, you really shouldn't drink." The genetic fallacy states that just because the source of a bit of information is tainted doesn't mean that the information is wrong, okay, or the conclusion is wrong. So in this case, an alcoholic telling you that you shouldn't drink, you can't say, "Well, he's an alcoholic, how can he tell me anything?" All right, the fact that you shouldn't drink is not directly connected to the fact that he's an alcoholic. But there's a whole bunch of these fallacies, and when you look at it, they're kind of fun to look at. My favorite one is an amphibole. An amphibole is when you end up with two different meanings. And I remember seeing this one in the paper. It said, "We should follow the example of those that cut the grass on their own graves." Now, immediately that sounds weird, right? But they're talking about people who own graves, right, grave sites, but they're not dead yet. These are people who are living, who are, have loved ones in a cemetery, that kind of thing, or they have their own plots they're going to be going to. So, learn them; it will help you. So, what I mean by using scientific principles, that I use them, is that I observe, I experiment, and I confirm. Or I study someone else's experiment and look to see confirmation in the community of experts in the field. Science is a method of bypassing our cognitive biases, okay? Who wants to say goodbye to the patrons, huh? Who wants to say goodbye to the patrons? You want to say goodbye to the patrons? Lucy, go say goodbye? Lucy, Goosey. You're not going to say it? Say goodbye. Say, pretty bird. Pretty bird. She might say pretty bird because she wants to be here. And if she thinks I'll do it if she says pretty bird, generally, she only says pretty bird when she wants something. She'll say it if she has to go poop. If she wants something, you have. Right, pretty bird? Thanks so much for all your support. And I hope to see you at Workplace. If you haven't already signed up to be on, you're on our board of advisors, but in order to make that work, you've got to be on Workplace. So I'm crossing my fingers you'll sign up if you haven't already. So we'll see you later. Brad, who is on our board of directors, came up with a great idea. He mentioned that we hadn't done much to change the studio over the last few years, and maybe it was time to make a change. He suggested maybe some kind of forest scenes. Well, I went out searching on Amazon, and I found several of these, which we now have hanging around the sanctuary. And you might consider this for your home. I'm also putting some into the bird rooms now so that the birds can look at forest scenes on the walls instead of blank walls. Great idea, right? Well, Cecil thought we ought to pass this tip along. So as he's dancing to the song we have in Jailbirds, silently in the background, show you some pictures of what the studio looks like with its new tapestries. These are hanging tapestries, and if you can see up here, it's just held by a simple pin. They're just push pins, and you just push pin them into the walls. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, Cecil's cool stuff. We welcome your feedback on our videos. We look forward to your insights, tips, questions, stories, and pictures. You can email us at cockatoo@chloesanctuary.org, reach us on Twitter @Chloe Sanctuary, and join with us on our Facebook Chloe Sanctuary page.
Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.